Today, I am going to talk to somebody that we go back a long, long time. I'm sure you'll hear lots of stories. The one and only Mr. Sean Young. Hello, Pops. That's what we call each other. How you doing?
Hello, Pops. Hello, old man. And I got to call you that because I'm running out of people I can call that anymore.
I know, because now I can call you that. I know. I swear, I can't believe when I think about how old you are. Like, not that you're old, seriously, but
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
You're a kid. I met you when you were a kid. So it really is, it's weird. Time flies. Time flies. Anyway, we have so much to talk about. Everybody who comes to Epac knows Sean. He has done so much work at Epac. He is such a big part of the history of Epac. So there's a lot to talk about. He is a fan favorite. But outside of the theater, and that's what I really want to start with this, because outside of his theatrical life, he's had another life, which is really interesting. As interesting as his theatrical career. And he has worn many very, very, very different hats, and they're all extremely interesting.
So I went to college at Elizabethtown. Ignore the NYU. That's where my daughter went.
Yes, I know.
Go to college there, and all I got was the sweatshirt. So, and she's actually at home right now trying to finish college from her bedroom, which is something that a lot of college students.
And she's theater major, so that must be very interesting.
It is. It's kind of neat, you know. So, I went to Elizabethtown College. I studied communications, and when I came out there, I went to work as a television news reporter for Action News 15, which strangely enough now is about 10 minutes from where I live. Even the television station is now closed. I can drive up to the old building that nobody's in and see it anytime I want.
What station was this? I'm sorry.
It's Action News 15, WLYH. It was a little CBS affiliate that closed in the 90s. Ran out of money, consolidation.
Yeah, I think I remember this. It was like a CBS affiliate. Yeah.
Yep. I left there and I went to work for WGAL for Channel 8 and worked for their news for about almost 6 years. And spent time there first as a nighttime reporter covering a lot of really boring evening meetings, the political meetings, the school board meetings, the county commissioner meetings, all that good stuff, township supervisors. And then I went to Harrisburg, where I was the Capitol reporter, and I covered state politics for about a year and a half. Covered sort of the crime beat in the Harrisburg Market Capital region. And then I got the big break as the co-host of 1230 Live. Lori Burkholder and I did a show together for 3 years. And did all sorts of really cool stuff. I mean, I got to meet really amazing people. Got to meet Alice from the Brady Bunch. Got to meet C. Everett Koop, the former Surgeon General of the United States back in the Reagan days. Got to meet just a lot of amazing and varied people.
How did you go from cub reporter, local, to politics, to the Capitol and working for the governor? How did that happen?
So when I was in Harrisburg, that year and a half I spent at the state capitol, you interact with a lot of administrative people, a lot of people from different administrations and political parties and so forth. And I've always kind of had a little bit of a flavor for politics. I find it interesting. I will say I'm probably as frustrated as everybody else is these days. Changed a lot in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But I had made some contacts with some people, and they had an opening in the administration, and a friend reached out and said, "Hey, would you have any interest in this role?" And I said, "Well, just as it happens, my contract is up and I'm a free agent and I can look at it." And I went and interviewed for the job and got it. So,
wow. How long were you with Reg?
Almost 4 years. I actually left to go to be the director of public relations for Hershey Medical Center.
Yeah.
A little before Ridge left, because he left at 9/11. So I left in July of 2001.
Right.
He left obviously right after 9/11 to go become the head of Homeland Security for Bush.
That's right. I remember that. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Wow. And so now you're at Hershey Med. You've been at Hershey Med.
Yeah, so I started as the director of public relations for Hershey Medical Center back in about July 2001, and have been with them ever since, and have been fortunate to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak. And now I'm actually the chief marketing officer for Penn State Health, which is the parent health system that owns Hershey Medical Center and St. Joseph Medical Center in Berks County, and about 57 different practices in about 9 counties.
Wow. And you're responsible. What is your job responsibility with all this?
So I oversee all the marketing and advertising for Penn State Health. I oversee the internal communications, corporate communications, media relations, development and management of the website and the digital platforms and social media platforms. I've even got the print shop, and our graphic design team is part of the team that I oversee.
Wow. Now, so how are things going there now during this insane time?
Well, it's been there's never been anything like it. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah.
Probably spent the last 3 weeks working from home. We've been Penn State Health has been really prescriptive about how we're managing employee comings and goings to try to prevent the spread of the virus.
Yeah.
And because Natalie was in Brooklyn, and because of everything that everybody knows was happening in New York, Denise and I didn't feel comfortable with Natalie staying up there. If something should happen, we didn't want her to be stuck having to get care from a New York hospital that was overwhelmed.
Right.
So Denise went up and picked her up in New York a couple of weeks ago, and our travel policy for Penn State Health is that if you're in contact with somebody you have to be quarantined and work from home. So a couple of weeks ago, I started a 9-day quarantine. Now the 9-day is over, but I've gotten so accustomed to working from home. I do these Zoom calls, most of the day, and phone calls and writing things and reaching people and making connections.
Talk and Zoom.
Shouldn't we all have done that? Yeah, so it's been busy. I mean, the days start at usually before 7 o'clock in the morning and run till 7 o'clock at night right now. We've been really fortunate that we haven't been overrun with cases. I think a lot of that is because people have paid attention to the recommendations of social distancing and trying to stay home and working. I would tell you that the thing that makes me the most nervous right now, and I think makes some other folks nervous, is that people don't go gradually into resuming routines, but they go abruptly into resuming their routines, and then we have them all over again. So hoping, and I think a lot of folks working in healthcare are hoping that folks will be very careful and gradual as they start to resume their normal routines when that time comes, because I don't think we're completely out of the woods yet. I'll tell you what's reassuring, Ed, is that, in my job, I get to have interactions with some very, very bright and thoughtful and intelligent and creative and innovative people. I've watched people in our health system develop prototypes for protective equipment because, everybody's got that trouble with the supply shortage right now.
Right. I was going to ask
about folks inventing our own materials and working with outside companies to get them made and produced so that we can try to get access to PPE. We just announced this past week we're doing several clinical trials. Hershey Medical Center is the only hospital in the region here that's doing convalescent plasma, which is where you take antibodies from the blood of somebody who's already had and survived the disease.
Right.
Do a transfusion with people who have the disease. People have been, it's something to be part of an organization and do your job day in and day out. It's another thing at a time like this to watch some of the people who really provide the care and do the research and develop the protocols and see them in action, because it's pretty impressive. Makes me feel a little dumb. Because you get these folks who are, really, really smart and capable. From what I can see, and remember, I'm working from home. I'm not in the trenches where some of our healthcare heroes are. What you can see is people supporting each other, helping each other out, sort of, people that go running in when other people are running out, the folks working at our system are the ones who are, they're on the front lines and they're doing what they need to do.
It's not a little thing. I get so mad when people say it's overblown. It's not this. It's not. Yeah, I might not feel it here in my apartment, but there are people out there dying. The hospitals are being overwhelmed. It's serious. It's not an overblown publicity stunt or whatever, or politicizing it. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, as of yesterday at our 2 hospitals, we've had 4 people that have passed away because of coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to your point, it can be lethal, and it has taken lives, and it's taken lives locally and in our communities.
The images that are coming from New York are terrifying. I mean, and that's my hometown. And to see the mass graves, to see like the Elmhurst Hospital, which was my hospital, and in my own, the trucks outside carrying the bodies away. It's just, wow. It's terrifying. It's something unbelievable.
Which is why we just need people to keep, practicing social distancing, health hygiene,
Right.
Stay home if you don't have to be out, wear a mask if you do.
Oh, you mean I have to hygiene? I have to actually shower when I'm home?
Say that again?
Hygiene, I actually have to shower when I'm...
Yes, you do. You should. You in particular.
I wondered why the cats weren't coming near me.
No, wash your hands. Wash your hands, for the love of Pete.
With all that in your career, in your life, and all those big jobs, and all that responsibility, you have managed to also have another life, a theatrical life, which was extremely, extremely busy.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is that my family's pretty amazing. I mean, it's a great thing that, Denise has always been very supportive of what I've done from a theater perspective. And, she probably does more for the kids in spades than I do. Not that I don't love them and not that I don't take care of them, but, most of what they need on a daily basis, it's mom they go to for that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been terrific and very supportive, and does theater herself, so she has a love for it. I try not to be a snob about the shows that I'm going to do, but I try to make sure that...
When did this change your part?
I try to make sure if I'm going to do something, it's something I'm really committed to, because I don't want to waste other people's time if I'm worried I won't have the time or the energy to commit to it. I got to watch like what time of year I do things. What time of the year is always a really difficult time to do a show.
Right. So let's start at the beginning of your theatrical career, because it's long and varied. You're not one of these people, am I correct in this, that at 3 years old knew they wanted to be on stage? You were like Jock. You were like Mr. Jock, sports guy.
Well, it's interesting. So I went to Conrad Weiser High School in Berks County, which has gotten bigger over time, but when I graduated with like 183 kids in my class, and it was the biggest graduating class they ever had. And my friends were also in the concert choir or in the band, and they played multiple sports because our school wasn't that big, so you had to do lots of things. It was one of those things where, at some schools, I know the experience is, if you're a jock, you pick on the artists. And if you're artists, you get marginalized. But at our school, the jocks were the artists. The artists were the jocks. And nobody picked on the people in the chorus of the high school musical because they were the linemen for the football team. And it was a little different. We didn't have the same kind of sort of negative peer pressure that sometimes goes along with that stuff.
So you started acting, singing in high school.
Yeah, the first production I did, and it's so politically incorrect now, but was in Berks County when I was barely 16 years old. I did a production of The Wiz, a white Wiz, and I was the Tin Man in The Wiz. So, I mean, it's worth laughing at now. It's absolutely...
I would pay to see that.
I worked at Alpha for a couple of years. I did a couple of shows there. I was in 2 productions of Evita in the ensemble. I did the Tin Man and the Wiz. I was actually Melvin P. Thorpe in a production of Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Wow.
And I did 2 productions of Jesus Christ Superstar there, which is the first time I played that role. I was 19 years old, and then 50 years old last year. I did it again at the Hershey Symphony with the Hershey Symphony Orchestra.
You're never gonna give up that role,
hey, you know what? I met Ted Neely once when I had the TV show, the original Jesus in the movie.
Yeah.
And Ted Neely was still doing it when he was older than me. So if Ted Neely can do it, maybe I can keep doing it. So he was a great guy too, by the way. When I talked to him, he was very humble. Just sort of said, "Hey, I'm just a drummer from Houston." That's all he said he was. So, but yes, I did Superstar there a couple times. I played Joseph in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat there. That was the irony. I don't know if Corey Buller will see this, but I had directed the production of Joseph at Epac and cast him as Joseph. And I remember, coming to the realization that when I had played Joseph, he was in diapers.
Oh, wow.
There's a college professor I had who was the son of the famous broadcaster Eric Severide. His name was Michael Severide.
Yeah.
He was one of my communications professors at Elizabethtown College, and I still ran into him at E-Town from time to time. And he was the artistic director at Epac at the time that I first came there. I ran into him at the barber shop. We were talking theater, and he said, "You should come audition." And then I showed up at Epac, and there was this ponytailed, crazy director, Fernandez, who was auditioning for parts for Secret Garden.
Yeah. That's the polite version. I'm going to tell the of what brought you to the shores of Epac. There was a show called The Secret Garden, and you were at another company who shall go nameless.
Yeah.
And you wanted the lead of that. You wanted the lead. What's Archie?
I wanted to audition for the part of Archibald.
You wanted Archie. The artistic managing director of that theater took the role for himself.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't even get to audition. You heard about we were doing the show.
Yep.
So you came to audition for us and got the role.
Yes, I did, and did the show with Alicia Roman, who's now on Broadway and does stuff up in New York, and had a great time.
At that time, this is so funny. One of my favorite stories. I did not watch JL, or I don't know. Were you doing?
How could you? How could you?
Were you doing live at the time?
I was. Oh, well, yeah.
So you were doing live at the time. And we used to, before the theater was renovated, we used to rehearse in the Epac Center, which was a beautiful building next door.
Just right across the park.
Yeah, a restored building, and it was beautiful. And they let us do auditions in there because
incredible acoustics. I still miss the acoustics of that place.
And because we couldn't rehearse in the theater because there was no heat, no air, nothing. It was a barn in those days. And Alicia Roman is there at the auditions. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the auditions, it's me and Cindy Reaver, who was my musical director. Alicia Roman comes in and says, Ed, there's somebody here to see you. It's the newsboy is here. The newsboy is here. And I'm like, the newsboy? And I'm thinking in my head, I'm not going to pay their newspaper bill. Newsboy coming like I'm from New York, Yeah, Miss Fernandez, your was $5.
Yeah.
So I said, what? And then it was you, and I said hello, and I'll never forget the first time I laid eyes on you. I was at that end, I turned around, and there you are with this look on your face. At the other end, right to the door to come into the main room, and just like scoping out what was going on with this sort of cocky, inquisitive smile on your face.
Oh, well, it's got to be cocky. It's got to be cocky, huh? I thought it was very humble when I walked in there, and you're saying cocky.
Okay, let me check this out. It was like, sizing up the club before you wanted to go in it. And I was like, and then you came in and you sung, and it was done. It was a done deal. It was a done deal.
Yeah, and then I got to work with the meanest artistic director I have ever worked with in my life. And unfortunately, there's only a handful of us left at Epac that remember what I'll call the old Ed. You were tough. You were tough. People have no idea how easy they have it now. You're such a teddy.
No, I'm such a teddy bear now. But people are still afraid of me. I'm like, what? You said I've been here 20 years ago.
Which is why every time somebody wants to give you a hard time about something, they all whisper in my ear to say something to you about it.
But no, I put you through your pay. Oh my God.
I remember. Let's see. We do not rush through the script to get to the next hit. You may not use your hands until I tell you. You're indicating all over the place.
You're singing a song, not bringing an airplane. John, you're not bringing an airplane.
You were mean.
It's that cockiness of youth,
Yeah.
So then then you came back to eat. Well, you never really left. You just went to do other things Reading, and then you were back, and then you started to really.
Oh yeah, then we did that amazing production in 1996 of Chess.
Oh God. I'm into that.
Which I still think is some of the best music ever written for the theater and the worst script ever written for the theater.
Oh my God, that production!
The first show I ever did with the legendary Bobby Bear.
Oh my God, yeah. You had the whole string of Guys and Dolls, and the Sondheim year. I mean, how many shows have you done together?
I think we've done probably 20 at least, maybe close to 2 dozen. I'm sure I've done more than 2 dozen shows at Ephrata.
Wow.
We've done Assassins twice. We've done Sunday in the Park twice. We've done Guys and Dolls. We did Falsettos. We did Rocky Horror.
Wow. Yeah. You were the first brand.
On and on.
Rocky Horror. Yeah. And then we segued to the Fulton for a show.
Yeah.
I did my first show with the Fulton, directed Cinderella.
You made me be Prince Charming.
And I made you be Prince Charming. You were Prince Charming. And I made you be Prince Charming. That was a fun production.
It was a good time. And it was nice to do something on the stage of the Fulton. It was the one and only time I've ever been on the stage there.
It's co-directed Superstar with me.
Yeah.
So Tim Riley, he is watching, I guess, his Superstar when he was young and fit. And
oh yeah, I'm sure he's a mess now.
Yeah, well,
Hey, he's 10 years younger than I am. I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah, but I got to bust his chops.
Yeah.
Then Riley, because I know he's watching. When he had a body and he had hair, and he was really good. And
I'm sorry, it's all Ed. I'm not the one picking on you. It's all Ed.
And but he had a big job. He was a pharma salesman. He was a pharmacist. He had a problem. And he did the show, but he had to leave the last week. Couldn't do the last week of the show. You took over the last week.
Yep, the final week.
How was that?
Well, so it was really weird, right? So first, the cast didn't know because we didn't want them focusing on it, right? We wanted them focusing on the production at hand. And folks felt really good about it. I mean, it got great reviews. It was full of energy. And everybody had really bonded with Tim as Jesus. And it was this really cohesive, tight production.
With Jordan Weinhold was a little kid.
Yeah, I remember.
And Xander Gone. You forget Xander was in it. He was a little disciple too.
Yep. And Nick Smith, and I mean, we could go on and on. Corey, there were all these people who were in it. And it was just a fabulous. I felt like it was. I know we did it, but I felt like it was just a really neat, cool interpretation of it. And the irony is, as Denise and Natalie and I were watching the Legend production, we were kind of joking about the fact that it looks like they almost watched our production and stole some of the concepts from it. That production. I mean, the way the set was laid out, the the sort of anytime, any place scenario they'd set up, the costumes, all that. And Mike had just done such a terrific job with the set and gave it a very unique feel and look, and the costumes were well done, and the cast really got into the idea of the show. I mean, cut their hair and dyed their hair and, you know, got fake tattoos and did all sorts of stuff for our concept of the show.
Yeah.
But when Tim had to tell the cast that he wasn't going to be there for the last week, I know we did a pickup rehearsal, and the pickup rehearsal just felt very surreal. It felt very surreal for me because I'd been sitting outside watching it the whole time, and all of a sudden I'm like right in the middle of it. And for everybody else, you know, you get that synergy with actors. You know, my reactions, my timing was different than Tim's. And so it felt like you had taken a part and put it into a machine that was working really well. And it was kind of creaky and cranky and a little weird for the first production or so. And then after that, everybody just sort of eased into it. When you got a 6'2" Jesus who's, you know, chiseled and, you know, matinee idol, you know, it's
very light,
magnetic on stage. And then you bring in the 5'10", dark-haired, you know, 10-year older guy to step in for that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people loved it. I mean, and people came back to see you in it, and it, you know, it all worked out for the best. But
yeah, it was a really fun production.
It was a really fun
so enthusiastic about it. You know, those shows where people just love being part of the show, where it doesn't feel like a second of work because everybody's just so completely engaged in it. Those are always the best shows. They're the shows that just kind of come alive.
So then came the great, you know, the Sondheim record, the Sondheim Assassins twice, Sunday twice, Sweeney, which was very special. All those shows are very special.
I have absolutely loved being a part of all three of those shows. I mean, in every one of those situations, both productions of Assassins, both productions of Sunday, the production we did at Sweeney, the cast in all three of those shows and all 5 productions were so committed, so professional. Everybody got along. There was no drama. It was a great experience from a rehearsal standpoint. You know, some shows you just feel like you're pulling teeth and there's conflict in the rehearsals, or there's disagreements about the direction the show's going, or there's cliques and some people get together with other people and they kind of leave other folks out. But in those shows, everybody just felt like one unit, one team.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun to do those shows. They're probably some of the best experiences I've ever had on stage.
And then the last 2 shows we did, Sean, I have to say, are like 2 of my really incredible experiences. It was Sweeney and then Ragtime.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the Sweeney and the Ragtime were like so organic, like concept-wise, like the cast and Mike, our brilliant set designer, and everybody just conceptualized those shows organically together, and they were really great. They weren't copies of anything, or they were wonderful experiences. So wonderful.
Yeah, and Jeremy, who was in that show, over my shoulder, Jeremy, I got your painting hanging in my office. I got that at the Epac auction.
Going backwards now, you were also the president of the board for a lot of years, and
about 5 years.
5 years, and you guided Epac through the renovation process where we are today.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I have to give Stephanie Sy credit from back in the day. She was the one who first came up with the idea of trying to renovate that old barn and turn it into a year-round theater. And that idea, I think we all just got fascinated with that idea somehow, and a group of us just got together and started figuring it out. And Brenda Shalacy, who was on the board, her husband was an architect, and Mark, you know, said, boy, I could draw up some designs for you to look at. And you know, it just kept snowballing, and we eventually got the borough to get behind us and support it. And we ran a $2.5 million campaign that I think is almost now finally all of the payments that are required for the theater are nearly in and done. So it's, it was a 20-year process, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Man, yeah, I mean, it was both the most frightening time of my life and the most fulfilling.
I'll never forget when the Wrecking Balls came in. We did Follies. It's the last show we did.
Yep.
Theater.
Yep.
And it was very.
I think that was the first show Stacia Smith did for you, right?
Yeah, she was young Heidi. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the day after it closed, emptied out the theater, and the Wrecking Balls were there. They wanted to do as much work as they could before the winter months set in. It was already fall. And that theater, the existing facade, just came down like nothing. The Wrecking Ball barely touched it, but it all flopped. And it was on
the building was like 115 years old.
It was on its last legs, dude. Yeah. I didn't know how long it could keep standing. But then your daughter now is totally into theater too. Little Natalie started.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that. She came to see Honk. I went to see Honk. She loved Honk.
Yeah. Every single night, Trish Corcoran, she didn't call her Trish, she called her my Ida. The character in the show was Ida, and I want to see my Ida. I think 5 years old at the time, 5 or 6. And, that was the show that Jonathan Groff had done, claim to fame at Epac before he did Bat Boy then later.
Right.
And, Natalie still is in contact with Jonathan and texts him and talks to him from time to time. And I remember she would come every night and sit. We didn't even have tickets. We would sneak in the back door and sit in the aisles and watch the show because she wanted to watch that show every night. Every night I'd come home from work. Daddy, are we going to see Honk?
And she'd sit there on the steps.
So we drive, 5 minutes over to the theater and sit down and watch Jonathan and Trish and Big Daddy and the folks in Honk do
yeah.
And then it's been really interesting because as she's gotten the theater bug, and the first show she did at Epac was Times Square Angel. I think she was seven years old or something. And you put her in a costume that was a vagabond's costume. And
she's supposed to be a little
didn't like it because it made her look Pete. Oh.
She hated her costume.
Couldn't stand it.
A little waif, like the little match girl singing the Christmas carol at the end. Saying, cry. Oh, she was not having that. She hated it. She did not want to play a poor girl over.
But then she did all sorts of other shows there. She did Bugsy Malone Jr.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Did 13 and did Carrie the musical.
Carrie, yeah.
Went and got into NYU as a musical theater vocal performance major. And in fact, Jonathan has been very supportive of her and helped write her letter of recommendation to help her get in at NYU and stay in contact with her.
I helped her with her monologues, her entrance monologues.
You did, yeah.
Yep.
And in fact, when she went and did her monologue auditions at open calls in New York for the different performing arts colleges, they complimented on her monologue work and said, somebody must have really worked with you on it who knows what they're doing. There you go. But you were never as mean to her as you were to me.
Oh, no, because she was plenty mean to me. She scared me. 2 things. First of all, I'm going to tell one of my favorite Sean Young stories. You're going to hate me for this, but it is so funny.
Oh, okay.
You know where I'm going with this.
No, I have no idea because there's so many of them.
You know it. So we were doing Jekyll and Hyde, which is a great production. Yolanda London was Lucy, right? That's the character.
Yep.
And it was a really good production. Another show you talked me into that I didn't want to do, but unlike Chess, because I thought, I don't like the show, but unlike Chess, this turned out to be really good. And it was really scary, and we made a really good show. But because it had always been done with the lead playing Jekyll and Hyde with dreads, like, he becomes
long hair.
He becomes Hyde and whips the hair, the Guccioli, whatever thing. And so you got dreads. We made you get dreads.
I went down to Columbia Avenue in Lancaster to a place called Champs. Nobody else knew what Champs was. Yolanda knew what Champs was. You did not go to Champs. You did not sit in the chair at Champs and have them put a weave in your hair.
Oh, God.
Yes, I did. I sat there for 2 hours while they threaded weaves into my hair, and I had these long dreads. And I had them for one night.
I wish there was a picture.
One night.
I wish there was a picture, but there's no.
Because you and Pat Cowder, God bless, this was probably 2 or 3 years before cell phones. Nobody ever got a picture of it.
No, thank God.
There is no picture of me with these dreads.
So you walk in and we're like, no.
You and Pat Cowder were like, those are awful. And the long hair that I had wasn't real long, but it was long enough that we could do something with it.
And I said, those are coming out.
And so forth. So
we went back to your house after rehearsal.
Yeah.
And we sat there, and Denise, God bless her heart, sat there till 3 o'clock in the morning, finding those little, and cutting the threads out of you.
Oh, and I was so bad about it because I was like, don't cut my real hair. Don't cut my real hair. Because the weave, the thread they used to put the weave in was almost the same color as my hair.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Until 3 o'clock in the morning, God bless her with the scissors.
I know. And we were sitting there, and and then I said, just do it with your hair, and it worked. It worked. You know, it was actually wonderful that there was no change except, you're acting, and it really was great. 2 most memorable things that you've done on stage from a theatrical life that you're most proud of, and the 1 or 2 things that you wish never happened or don't want to revisit or want to erase.
Okay, so let's do the bad first, right?
Okay,
get it out of the way. Okay, I love the music of Chess, but we should not have done that. The good thing was we got to work with some really good people. It was the first show I ever did with Bobby Bear. I wouldn't trade that because I've loved working with Bobby over the years and have done a couple of great productions with her. But other than that, that show was just not a good show. And probably having to get the natty dreads for Jekyll and Hyde, the story brought up. That was pretty rough. I will say too, I've done a lot of shows at Epac, and I've very rarely, if ever, had trouble with my voice. But the one thing about Jekyll and Hyde, and it wasn't the singing, it was constantly doing Hyde's voice, and that growl with his dialogue was very rough on the throat.
Do you remember Pat Cowder couldn't watch the end because it was so violent?
Yeah, well, it was, and I remember Yolanda and I have talked about that scene even years later, about how brutal and violent and I mean, we were throwing each other around on stage there at that time.
You know what? I'm talking about, I was a monster kid. I grew up as a monster kid.
Yep.
I was 6 years old watching horror movies. So I just, that's why Sweeney, I was just like, I'm going to do this as a horror movie. And the ending, Pat couldn't even, I remember Pat, God bless her, couldn't even watch the end. We've got to tell this story before we go. I know that. Remember Secret Garden? I don't know who this was. Okay, so we're doing Jekyll and Hyde, right? And you and Kurt, God bless Kurt Simpson, you and him were so funny together. Oh my God, I miss him so much. But he was like Jekyll's best friend, and you were doing the first scene in the Divey Tavern where Lucy's performing.
The Red Rat.
Bring on the Men, and Pat Cowder did it, and it was dirty, and it was low, and it was really good. So in the middle of Bring on the Men, this woman stumbles down the center aisle on the stage and just like starts signaling for the audience to leave. Let's go! And she was so repulsed by the show. And then she's in the lobby screaming at me about, remember Secret Garden.
Bring back Secret Garden. Bring back Secret Garden. I remember when that happened on stage, and Kurt and I were sitting next to each other on this bench in the Red Rat. That's where we had first come in and sat down. And when she got up, we didn't know exactly what happened. And You could actually smell the booze.
You could smell the booze
when she walked past. And I remember Kurt saying something. I can't, for the life of me, tell you what it was, but he ad-libbed the line as she was leaving. Audience cracked up over. And it was something like, boy, they served the drink strong here at the Red Rat, or something along those lines. Some smart aleck comment about the person who had interrupted our scene.
Oh my God!
I don't know for the life of me what it was, but it was a well-timed ad-lib line.
You're gonna destroy theater in this town. Remember Secret Garden? How could you do this after Secret Garden?
Yeah.
And then the punchline is Pat. You know, it upset Pat so much she had to go to Wawa to get like Tums, and the woman was there, and Pat walks in to get Tums. And the woman is there at Wawa screaming that we're doing porn. They're doing porn in the playhouse. They're doing
the good stuff. I think you know, I'd always have to say the productions of Sunday in the Park. You know, it's just the children and art component of that show. That, you know, the heart of that show is really about legacy and what is the legacy you leave behind. And I think the older that I've gotten, and probably more so the second time I've done the show, because, you know, I've had a chance to be, you know, to see my kids grow up. And, you know, you start to understand that intersection of children and art, and to have kids who are interested in the arts, you know, a son who taught himself to play guitar, who is a musician, you know, daughter who's gone to school for musical theater and has basically grown up at Epac. You know, that the impact of that for me is very personal and will always be very personal. And then, of course, the other probably most significant highlight of my theatrical career at Epac has got to be playing a Nazi on stage in Sound of Music with Ed Fernandez. I think of all the acting that I've done, that's probably the most impressive thing that I've done on stage at Epac.
Alan Gomberg, my best friend, still laughs at it. He said, it's the most interesting thing. Oh, nice. That's the most interesting thing. I was like, where are these characters I want? Because we had to do, because your daughter was in it. She was one of the Von Trapp kids.
Yep.
I couldn't get a male ensemble, so I had to play this like bit part of the man you fight with. You were the evil Nazi dude. And we had this confrontation in the middle of I think the end of the first act or something, during the ball sequence, I don't know. And we would up it every performance.
I think 95% of it was ad-libbed.
We would walk off stage and die laughing. We were just like, how can we make it bigger every night? It was hysterical.
That's the one thing. As a director, Ed, you're always telling actors not to steal focus. But when you're on stage, you are.
Oh, I know. I know.
Shameless.
I know. That's why I can't not. I mean, such a ham bone. I can't. But you're just as bad as me.
Oh, not at all. No. I'm always very professional, very measured in my approach. You are a bad influence. That's all there is to it.
No, when I did Times Square Angel with you, and you were my leading man, quote unquote, I had to fight for every bit of stage time. I'm sorry. It's like, and usually Ed breezes through those things and has the audience here. I had a fight for that.
Well, you know, the other fun part of Sound of Music, doing that little bit Nazi part, was I got to try to intimidate Carl Baumberg. Right? Make him sing for his supper and his family, and you know. So yeah, that's probably another goofy, cheesy highlight. You know,
one question: do you think there was much difference in your two performances? I know, like I prefer. I don't want to say I prefer, but they were different. But of course, getting older, you get more perspective. And I liked the second version of Assassins. I just thought we got something in that.
Yeah. I remember rehearsing that big Lee Harvey Oswald speech.
Yeah.
I remember we had a very deliberate conversation, because the first time through, you know, I'm a little like a computer. Once I've got something in the code, it keeps coming back. So if I do parts over again, I basically have to break the old habit. And I remember we did the first run through of that, And we said, you know, it's good, but it's what we did before, right? Could we do something different? I remember we had a very deliberate conversation about doing something completely different in the way we approached that scene. And I remember the first time we did that, we kind of looked at each other and had the conversation about, do we like that or do we not like that? Is it different and it's good, or does it feel weird because it's different? And I remember it took a lot of time to sort of work through that final scene and get it to where we wanted it. But I would agree with you. I think the second approach, the second time we did the show, it just felt there was a better, more grittiness to it. There was a better connection in terms of what John Wilkes Booth, the character, was trying to get to have happen. It felt manipulative of the people in the and
there was something that anger tapped into the resentment of the assassins, and it was funny. And I still think, and I forget about it until I'm reminded of it, I still think that your performance in The Pillow Man was one of my favorites.
I love that show. And that was the first time I had worked on stage together with Tim Riggs. And obviously with Czechia, we did that show together. And I just remember the three of us having a lot of fun doing that show together. It was great to work opposite them and play catch with those guys. And then of course the great thing is that Bob and I were only in the first act and the third act, so the whole second act we weren't in. So we do the first act, we'd run up to the hill and have dinner during the second act.
Did not
come back. Yes, we did. And we'd come back for the third act.
Okay. All right, kid. I'm gonna let you go. I've taken so much time today, but there's so much to talk about in our history and so much you've done for Epac.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you go. And
stay safe. Stay in. Wash your hands.
I will. And that goes for everybody else who's listening in today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless. Take care, Pop.
See you. See you, Pops.